This question goes out to the listeners and the viewers. Have you ever watched something and you're sitting there, you just see a scene and you get fired up and kind of makes you get out of your seats, gives you the chills, and you just want to go out and do big things? Has that ever happened to you? I'm going to ask this question to you too, our guest today, Harry Arnett. Has that ever happened to you while watching something on TV?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an emotional person. I get that way watching commercials sometimes. I love stuff like that. My wife and kids always joke with me because whenever they see we're watching something together and they see it's a scene that they know is emotional, and they're all like sitting there stone-faced like little statues, and they all in unison turn to look at me because they know that they're going to see me crying or tears in my eyes. They just know dad's like that. So absolutely.
Yeah, well, I guess you got to let your two kids know that that's how I felt about you while watching Wall Street, the documentary on Mark Wahlberg, just talking about all of his different ventures. And Harry, you are the CEO of one of them, MUNICIPal, an athleisure street-style clothing company. And dude, you had me wanting to run through a wall while watching some of these scenes and just the dialogue. And I felt obligated to get you onto the show because I want everybody else to kind of experience a little bit of that, or at least walk away with some sort of thing that they could apply to themselves to go out and chase down their dreams. Because, dude, you are a great leader. It definitely showed in that. Everybody definitely go check it out. But, dude, thank you so much for joining us here on Keep Swinging, brother.
Where were you? I wish we could have used you a couple years ago. We were going through this.
I know, right?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
Just listening to a lot of the interviews that you had done during the pandemic, I just heard so many different of your different takes and ideologies that you have that I'm just like, this dude's too good. So yeah, no, this is awesome, man. I'm pumped.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's weird to watch that now, and I didn't really even see anything until they were done with it. And the week that it aired, they sent over a couple of clips, and it was, it ended up premiering almost a full year after they started filming us. It was weird to see it and live through the starting of MUNICIPal, which we started in the fall of 2019. And of course, we were filled with optimism. We still are. And, you don't really know. You have plans, you plan, you put together your strategies, you put together, obviously, your business plan. As soon as you turn the lights on, things start changing. And obviously, nobody could have anticipated what was heading our way right at the beginning of 2020. In business sense, they call that tail risk. And what that is like something that has such a very, very, very small chance of happening. But if it happens, it has a catastrophic effect on your company. And giant companies will have scenarios in place for that. If you think of like the airline industry through 9/11 and mortgage industry or housing and building, or everybody really, and when the financial collapse happened in 2008. But little MUNICIPal, we didn't have any doomsday scenario plan. And as soon as something like the pandemic happened, and we were kind of hearing from our global partners that something was brewing, but fundamentally, we're Americans. We're like, nothing can affect us. Like we're the most powerful nation on the planet. Nothing's gonna hurt us. When it hit us, it definitely caught us off guard as a team, and certainly as the group that founded it. And personally, it caught me off guard because I think maybe what might have connected with you in watching the show is my wife and I and our family, we sort of put everything that we had done up to this point into this company because we believe that much in it. And so burning the boats, if you will, when we got in here, we had no contingency plan. We had no fallback. We had no, if this doesn't work out, we can go do this. Like we firmly believed in what we were doing and firmly believed in the team we had here, and we were built, and obviously with Mark and Steve Levinson, we were all in. And so we didn't have any choice but to figure out a way through it. If there's one thing I can pass on to anyone who's doing anything, I don't care if it's starting a business or trying to make a change in their life for the positive, is 90% of it is just staying in the struggle and not running away from things that you feel like are insurmountable, but staying in the struggle and having the self-belief and the optimism to really, really embrace those values, to have the confidence that you're going to move through it. That was on the job training. I could not have told you that before that, yeah, Matt, I've got this in spades. Like, who knows? I just hung on to that. I just hung on to that like there is a solution and I just need to stay in it and have the confidence that we're going to figure out as a team a way to navigate this. And it's going to be different than we imagined, but we're going to find our way through it.
We'll definitely go into a couple of those things a little bit deeper. And at the forefront of this company, like you said, co-founding it, it was yourself, Steve Levinson, and Mark Wahlberg, which those were the guys who brought you Ballers and Entourage, which everybody knows those two shows. And in my opinion, based off of your background, who better to be in this position to bet on your own selves than yourself in this position? Because, dude, like you're an Atlanta dude. I mean, Atlanta through and through. You have so much of the, I guess you could say, sports and clothing industry and marketing in your background. I mean, where did that all start for you? Because you're an English major at Emory.
Yep. I guess, when you put it that way about Atlanta sports fan, I guess I did have perseverance in me. That's all we got. Although we've had a little bit of luck lately. Our luck may be changing with the Braves and the Dogs.
Yep.
Okay, look, I didn't learn any of this stuff until later. The things I'm sharing with you and hopefully others is really being comfortable with who I am and understanding what my talents and strengths were and not trying to compensate for that, or I almost said ashamed of that, because I'm a creative person. I'm generally not a linear thinker. On a day-to-day basis, I've had to learn how to appreciate knocking through 10 or 12 things that are on the list. I'm married very well. Like, my wife is the ultimate. There are 15 things on her list and get out of her way because they're getting done. I'm not like that. I tend to be more creative, and my process is not linear. So it took me a while to kind of figure out how to add value into larger organizations, even smaller organizations, just period. How does a person like me survive? How do I even have a job? And so I kind of went through the first part of my career with a ton of dissatisfaction because of that, because I didn't have any real business role models. My dad created his own job. He was in the arts. He was a curator, a writer. And so I just, like, that's what I was close to all the time. It didn't really articulate how I felt I wanted to work. But I didn't have any understanding about, when I got out of college, like, how do you get a job? What are you supposed to do? And I did go to Emory, as you mentioned. A lot of huge chunk of those people, medical school or law school. I was like, definitely don't want to go to med school. I almost faint at the sight of blood, so that's not going to work. Anytime there's an injury in a game I'm watching, I don't watch the replay. I can't do that. So I know I can't be a doctor. And the thought of like being stuck behind a desk or trying to stay hyper focused on the law, I knew, like, no, there's no chance I could do that. So I had no clue. So that was really it. Like, okay, I know I can't sit behind a desk. I know I'm probably not suited for the archetypical corporate environment. So I ended up working in media for a few years at a sports radio station.
Okay, now this is right after Emory, right? Between
right
Emory
after,
and
that
getting
was
your
phenomenal,
MBA. Okay.
I was going to games. It allowed me to be creative. The only thing about it, speaking of really knowing how you're wired, I knew that I wanted something. It really wasn't a perfect fit for me because it didn't have any real, like, tangible output. I knew, like, I wanted something that had like a tangible output, not just spouting opinions that are gone today and there's no real archival significance to what's happening in, like, sports radio necessarily. So I ended up leaving there and going to work somewhat in the family business in book publishing. I realized, like, pretty quickly, I don't really know anything. I'm learning on the job, but I really don't have, like, a fundamental understanding of how business operates or how to bring a product to market, or I wouldn't even have that language then. So how to really function. So I ended up going to graduate business school as a chance to learn, and also as like a 2-year cul-de-sac where I could just kind of pull off the side of the road and like figure things out for a little while. And pretty much like my trajectory from that point on had a lot more direction to it. So I knew, or I really want to be close to either sports or something that where people have a strong emotional connection to the products or services. And that led me into the sporting goods, general sporting goods category at Russell Athletic back in the early 2000s, and then more specialized category into the golf industry, which is another passion of mine. And that was pretty much what I had done the last 15 years before really wanting to chase what I thought and still think was more of my calling, which is an entrepreneurial bent, and to start something and build something that had never existed before. And that's really what propelled me to want to start this company, Municipal, with Mark and Lev.
Dude, I love that you just shared that because I think a lot of people, when they graduate college, they believe that they need to know what they want to do for the rest of their lives right after they graduate. But that's not always the case. And you may try one job and another job and be completely miserable, but that's all right because you know what? Now you know what you don't want to do. Now you know where you can actually shift your focus and gear towards. So you did exactly that. I guess your one bit of experience in that kind of sporting goods area before all this stuff was when you're what 15 years old in the stock room at a soccer store, I believe it was. But
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. I love to get my hands on stuff, like even down to the I love the stitched on numbers on like the authentic game jerseys. Like, I mean, I still love that shit. Like to this day, I love just like poring over the stuff that everybody else probably thinks is boring, like the details that go into something and the craftsmanship that go into something that like really matters to people, you know. And I was a soccer player growing up, so like that really, like, I would geeked out over the stuff that no one else wanted to do, like pull out the shoes and stock them up and put them in the right size runs in the stocker room. Like I love that stuff.
you loved it so much that you actually ended up obviously working in sports, but also too, you had a great run between Callaway and TaylorMade. I mean, that was almost what 20 years about, or close to
Yeah,
20 years over
about
the
15 years.
decade
Yeah,
mark. Yeah, seriously. So you crushed in the golf game, and then towards the end, like you had this thing in the back of your head where you're saying to yourself, as you mentioned, the entrepreneur side of you, and you just wanted a challenge to diversify. And at the same time, I guess you had came across Mark Wahlberg, and he was in a similar situation. So, what was that meeting like for the first time with Mark Wahlberg? What basically snowballed into starting something with Mark Wahlberg and Steve Levinson? Because again, with your background and your expertise and your knowledge in the sports equipment field and just everything in general about it, like I said, like you were built for this. So how did that kind of transpire with those two guys?
when I was at Callaway, our one a fundamental philosophy we had when I got there was we wanted to connect with golfers of all types on a much deeper level and on a much more consistent and constant level of all abilities. Now, that's kind of hard in a if you just think of classic marketing strategy, you typically segment the market a certain way, and you target a specific group. And we were competing against a lot of really good brands, one of which TaylorMade, where I had worked, and Titleist being another, that talked to a very specific segment of the market. And we wanted to really be like the people's brand at Callaway and connect to broad segments of passionate golfers that love the game, but maybe weren't the best players specifically. So we really created a universe of community that were connected to us directly, mainly through digital media, where we were creating a lot of our own content. We were doing more content than at that time, right up until the time I left, more content storytelling, information, places for people to learn about our products in the game. we were doing more than all of our competitors combined. And what I didn't know about Mark then that I definitely know about him now is he is a hyper consumer of digital content. He has a passion for it, both as an entertainer and a creator himself. But particularly in golf, he's a rabid golf freak. So he was seeing the things that we were doing and loved that the way that we were going about doing it at Callaway. And he was a fan of the brand. And so he reached out to just kind of connect and to let us know that how much he liked what we were doing, how he appreciated it. And I invited him down to our test center, which is invitation only to come get fit, play our clubs, and we kind of hit it off from there. And then over the course of the next 7-8 years, we would talk, not frequently, but enough. If there was a new product that came out, he would reach out like, "Hey, tell me about that." I mean, just like an avid golfer. And as we started to become friendlier, Mark is a year younger than I am. And ironically, because if his life's pretty hyped. I don't know if you knew that, Matt, but he kind of lives a really elevated life, being an entertainer and flying around the world. But at its core, like fundamentally, he's a dad. He's trying to balance his work and his life and his family life. He's raising his kids. He's being pulled in a million different directions. He's traveling all over the place. And those are the same things I was going through, just at a different, no one had ever heard of me. And then I think the thing that really resonated that we were talking about is he was really starting to think about what he wanted to do the next 20, 30 years of his life. And he was really starting to, and how he wanted to spend his time, because that's the bottom line is what do you want to spend your time on? And he was really starting to align his passion, his talent, and his purpose, what he wanted to spend his time on. He was really starting to line those things up. And he was, rather than becoming a brand ambassador for pick a brand, they all ask him to do this stuff, every single day, a million brands ask him if he wants to endorse their product. He was starting to think he wanted to more align himself with companies that he cared about and companies that he could get more intimately involved in, because he had a real passion for learning about business. He's got a great business mind. And so we would talk about those things over time. And I would, if there was something coming up for Callaway brand, I would ask him, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about talking about it this way? Like, does that sound cool to you?" Like just at that level, like at a pretty superficial level. And at some point, not that long ago, he said, when we were talking, he's like, "Hey, we should do a brand together sometime." I was really into that idea. So I had some thoughts about that. He had some thoughts about that. That's where Lev came in, because Lev is like, of anybody I've ever been around, nobody has his or her ear to the ground of what's happening, like at a cultural level like him. And you can certainly see that in the most superficial sense. Like he has a really good ear for what's cool, which I always appreciated. Anyway, so the three of us started talking. We ended up talking about not just like what the stuff we would make, but what's the kind of impact we wanted to make. I just mentioned that I'm not a linear thinker a little while ago. That really resonated to me, because I wasn't interested in leaving a job that I loved, frankly, to just do something else. Like I really needed to do something that I felt like was going to have a significant impact on the culture, significant impact on people's lives. I guess I would say, like, I wanted to be somebody, right? I wanted to really see, like, do I have what it takes to start from nothing, to have no scale, to have no safety net? Do I really have the ability, metaphorically, to land on a freaking island and build something? And of course, I didn't know there was a pandemic coming. So, but And I thought, it's now or never. And so, like, boy, that sounds easy in hindsight, but there were so many internal barriers that I kept throwing out. Like, well, I have this great job. I have a boss that like I adore, who's a mentor of mine,
Kids.
and I've got kids, and you know, finally one day I came home and I had just come off of like two things at work that were like pretty mundane. And you may have moments like this when you go through something that feels like incredibly routine, like in the bad way that I mean routine, mundane, like just kind of grind you down. And I got home. I remember just driving home from the airport, and in my head I was just like, what am I what am I doing? I just can't. I'm just beaten down, and I get home and I'm telling my wife this. And my wife's like, what are you waiting for? You have two people that you admire and like that are telling you they want to get in business with you to do something new, and you're sitting here complaining about your current situation. It was like grabbing me by the lapel and being like, what are you doing? Wake up, like get after it. And that was such a great wake up call. I immediately I was like, you're right. I remember standing on my deck and first person I called was Lev. I was like, hey, what do you think if, because at that time we had talked about maybe incubating something within Callaway, et cetera. And I called Lev and I said, hey, what do you think if we just did this on our own? And Lev was like, I'm into that. Like, let's do it. And he's like, call Mark and see what Mark thinks. And I called Mark. I was like, hey, this is a little out of left field, but what do you think if we just did this ourselves, and we'll go raise the money to get it started, and we'll do it as a startup? And Mark said, one of the sentences I'll remember for the rest of my life. He's like, always bet on yourself. And I thought, you know what? You're damn right. And we went for it. And it's like from that point on, it was like, okay, let's manifest this, and let's not let anything get in our way, and let's just go for it. And it was probably reckless to do this in hindsight, but I'm glad I did. I ended up telling my boss, CEO of Callaway, who's a guy named Chip Brewer, that I still consider one of my mentors to this day. I told him the very next week, and we kept it between us for a while just cause. And I was like, it's just something I got to do. And he was totally supportive and understood. And I ended up having to stay for a while. I couldn't leave. Obviously, when you're my level, you can't just put in 2 weeks. So I stayed for about almost 4 months and then left. And the day after I left there, the lights went on at Municipal and we got started.
Man, I give you so much credit because it's like the first part of your career you thought that you were going to do something in the English field, then you decided not to, so you went to go get your MBA, try to figure out what you want to do, and then you're at the, I guess, middle part of your life where it's not typical for somebody, and I'm not calling you old, but somebody around that age to be a CEO of a startup. Because as you know, you're putting in the 80-hour work weeks.
Yeah.
You're just literally putting so much energy towards it, right? And for you to be able to step away from that comfortable job, that secure job that you had that was paying well while you had a family to go take this risk, it's extremely admirable. So like you've done this twice. And I think that at the end of the day, what you have working for yourself big time is that you could always look in the mirror and know that there, like you left nothing on the table. Like you literally have gone out to get what you wanted to achieve. And I think that's so cool because again, a lot of people when they get out of college, they think that they need to know what they have to be doing for the rest of their career, or they're in something for 5, 10 years and then they're absolutely miserable, but they decide to stay at that job. It's just like, dude, there's endless opportunities out there. Just go out and get them. And that's what you did.
Mark said something once to me, and I don't know if he made this up or heard it, but it resonated nonetheless. He said, hey, Harry, there's no such thing as a good time or a bad time. There's just time. So it's only how you look at it. It's just time. There's never a perfect time. So that's one thing I just heard this one like within the last week that, it's funny, like when you're in tune to this stuff, you hear it. Oh, I was reading a book about somebody, and in the book was the quote, opportunity is seldom convenient, which kind of speaks to like there's never a perfect time for anything. Like, oh, this is a perfect time to have children. This is a perfect time to get married. Like there's no such thing. There's just time and go, to go for it. And that's what you said. Really, really, I really appreciate that because, well, my wife and I we were actually watching Wall Street that you were mentioning, and we were sitting there on the couch and we were kind of reliving it. And it wasn't like fun to relive a lot of that. And I just turned to my wife and I said, like at the end of the day, like this could still crash into the ocean, but at least we went for it. We didn't stand on the sideline and wonder what if. We went for it. And being at my age to have done that, better late than never. And that's kind of what motivated me to change the path. Is I felt like it's really the only thing I would regret professionally and personally if when I got, too old to do that, or when it was all said and done, is I really would regret never having gone for what's sad as like a really big dream of mine for years and years. So and here we are, we're past our first full year of being in business, and we don't have the infancy risk that we had before. We have other risks, but we're through the part where we were really, you either kind of make it or you don't. We're through that. So it's clear now that this thing municipal is going to be wildly successful in some form, whether that's as big as we think it can be as a concept and as an impact, or some other thing. We know that it will at least be labeled a success. I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy about that. That added about 20 more minutes of sleep for me at night, which is good.
No, I bet. And one of the things too that I think it's important to point out is that you guys want to build a community. It's not just clothing that you're putting out. It's a message that you guys are putting out. And in a weird way, as much as the pandemic was obviously a bad thing for many, many businesses out there, the type of clothing that you guys have to offer, the athleisure, like the street style, that sporting clothing where it's comfortable while at the same time being presentable too. So I think it's so cool because a lot of people are working from home still to this point. So comfort's key.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that people felt awesome. And just like all the other stuff that we were talking about, is we really see our reason that we did this is we wanted to inspire people to never let anything get in their way of creating their best life. And that we want people to be the most comfortable they've ever been, to look the best they've ever looked, and to know that the things that municipal make are perform as good or better than anything they've ever had. And I think the other thing that was really important to us is we were a premium brand, but we wanted it to be accessible. We didn't want anyone to look at our stuff as so expensive or unattainable, because we really saw it as wanting to be the type of brand in the apparel space, at least, that people would feel like they want a municipal to be 80% of what's in their closet, because it's that comfortable. It makes them look that good, and it performs in any occasion that they're doing, whether they're going to the gym, in the gym, outside the gym, work, play, doing whatever. So we like to say we're making the things that you like to wear 99% of the time.
Exactly. That was pretty much my point of just being like, do it here, wear it at the gym, wear it driving around casually, just doing stuff around the house, which is awesome. It's so cool. And something else too that I thought was pretty cool that you guys did on the business decision side of making things was not going to a Neiman Marcus or a Nordstrom, because you don't want to get into one of those stores with a big name attached to it, but nobody knows about the brand. And then next thing you know, you guys are on the sale rack because nobody's
Exactly.
buying this stuff. And now it's stuff's at the discounted price. Definitely give you guys credit for making that decision, because I thought that was a great call.
Managing the directness of our communication and the experience as more one to one is was really important to us, especially in our infancy. That we felt like we had a better chance for long term success doing it that way, and that was the other kind of non negotiable for the three of us is we weren't in this just for 2 or 3 years, catch lightning in a bottle to launch this as a vanity celebrity brand, skim where we could with pricing, and then get out or sell or license or whatever. We really looked at this as things that were more representative of the three of our legacy and the people that work here. We want this. I, I, to, unlike things that are maybe venture backed or private equity owned, or certainly like agency led. When I talk to the people at our company and we're talking about personal development and their career and career path, I'm always wanting them to think of this is a place they're going to be the rest of their career. This is a place that I just had this conversation right before we got on this call. Is imagine that this is a place you're at for the next 15 years, and what does that horizon look like? And we're going to work backwards on your personal development, never taking the convenient shortest route. We're building something we feel like is here for the long haul, and something that's going to be really significant. And I personally have 20 years of probably work in front of me that I'm passionate about, and I want it to be here.
I kind of want to jump to the firing me up part that I was talking about in the intro right now, because the conversation that you just brought up, but like just with all of this too, just the communication has been so integral in your guys' growth and development too. Because even off the bat, and like you said, you guys are this isn't a flash in the pan 2 to 3 year project. This is something that you guys are thoroughly invested into, and we even saw it in the documentary Wall Street, where you guys had sent the first samples over to Mark Wahlberg while he's in London, and he didn't like him, but he said you have to be able to tell somebody when they do a good job, and you have to be able to tell somebody when they do a bad job. So this is something that you guys put so much thought and so much effort into. And on the conversation side of things, and you bring up the employees. How many employees are you at right now?
We're at 15 now, and growing. Yeah, we're getting up there, which is not now, that feels pretty big to me at the moment. I mean, I left a play, I've worked at places where my organization was significantly bigger than that. But right now, 15 feels pretty good.
So 15, and the one employee, which this is one of the parts that you just wanted to make me run through a wall, is AJ.
Yeah.
In one of the interviews, you said that AJ is a young man who has a child, a baby, and you're going to work your ass off in order for him and his wife to be able to raise his kids, to buy a house, and do
Yeah.
all those things. I literally got the chills just thinking about that right
I
now.
mean, it's the thing that motivates me the most, of thinking of the people that are here early, especially now. People that are here have choices, and they've chosen to be here. And in a large part, they've chosen to be here because they believe in the vision for the company, and they believe in Mark and Lev, and they believe in me. And I'm motivated to make sure that when it's all said and done, that they think it was the best decision they ever made. And tangibly, that what I was saying about AJ is very true, and about everyone else is I want them to look back on this experience and feel like it was the greatest place they ever were for personal growth and professional growth. And by the way, I want them to feel like I can't believe the 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 tangible upside that existed by being a part of something that was built from nothing. And so for someone like him, like, I'm just so geeked out to think of advancing us 2 3 years down the line, when um it's going to be financially meaningful for him to have been here. And that'll feel like a nice payoff and a nice validation that um that his trust in what we were doing was validated.
Yeah, no, I love that leadership aspect that you bring to the table with that, man. That's why I got the C on your chest.
It's hard work though, like that's the thing is I think for people that are emerging leaders or are leaders, and I'm not some wise sage here, I'm just speaking from experiences that you have to do what's right. Yeah, and a lot of times that's, as I mentioned before, is that's not what's popular all the time. It's not what's convenient most of the time. And that's what really is the call to action is to I lead from my heart. So people, they always know where I stand on stuff, good or bad. I think that helped me through the launch of the company just in its infancy, which we're still in our infancy, but in the really startup phase, and now we're in the early phase. And the pandemic is they knew that I wasn't sugarcoating anything, that I wasn't hiding anything, that I was just being honest about where we were. If there are things I don't know or didn't know, I would tell them. I would tell the team, and that's the I think that's the probably the best advice I could give anyone is being okay with that. You don't have to being a leader is sometimes you don't have all the answers, but giving the team the confidence that what you do have is trust in your own ability and trust in the team and the environment that you're creating, that you can solve any problem that gets in your way, big or small, big or small.
Yeah, perfect segue. So during this time of you guys trying to develop the type of cloth and everything that goes into these pieces of clothing, you had uh, obviously working with Levinson and Wahlberg. At one point, Levinson was saying that the one of the pieces of clothing was too itchy for him, and then you have Mark saying that the clothing wasn't him. But again, you're dealing with two different types of personalities, and you told Levinson you're not going to rattle me in a very nice way, and then you told Wahlberg that you're going to do it. Just your approach right there. So many people probably would have been like, "F you, this sucks," but under so much pressure, dude, you handled it so calmly.
Did I didn't feel very calm.
It looked like it.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, and these two dudes are, I mean, pretty intimidating dudes on the outside, and also too, obviously pretty powerful and as we know, wealthy. So there's zero intimidation factor with you when it comes to stuff like that. Again, I'm sitting there, I'm like, yo, this guy's a boss. He's the cool, calm, and collect boss.
Thank you for saying that. The what they showed couldn't capture, because it's, we were just one little story and have been one little story. But it couldn't capture like all of the relationship building among the three of us that had happened along the way. And so a lot of those moments might have felt pretty transactional to the viewer at the time because they didn't see us together a lot. But I knew that the two of them really trusted my subject matter expertise and my leadership, candidly, that when they were giving me feedback, or I knew that part of it is just their good natured ribbing. And, I think, and I've been around executives like this too, that they really want to see how much conviction you have. And there are different ways that people do that, and these two guys are the same. And so I have enough confidence in our team and certainly in my ability and experience that generally we're going to be moving in the right direction, and we're going to make some mistakes along the way. Who doesn't? But generally the mistakes we make are going to be above the water line, won't sink our ship, and we're going to keep moving forward. And so, I think that Mark and Lev, for absolutely, by now, I think that's something they would both say they really trust and respect about my day-to-day leadership here, is that we're not going to agree all the time on things, but net at the end of the day, that the decisions that I make are done in the spirit of moving the business forward and having heard their concerns or their input. And I'm not perfect. So like obviously I'm gonna get some shit wrong, but it's not because I'm stubborn or dug in or ignoring what they're saying.
Well, I'm sure anybody who watched and just listening to this is obviously rooting for you and the entire company, and the third part that want to make me run through a wall was just that final approval of right before launch, just before you were got the go ahead to print a bunch of shirts. Yeah, you went over to Wahlberg's house, and I just love that scene. That after you got the approval, saying how awesome the shirts were, you made that phone call, you got the backpack on, you're walking through the yard like, man, like you did it. You know what I mean? Like
Let's
I thought that was so
go.
cool.
LFG.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like I may have buried the lead a little bit right here, but and 40 minutes into this, but there was at the one point during the pandemic where your main investor backed out. So you guys were at a point where it was yourself, Levinson, and Wahlberg that you guys had to decide to again bet on yourselves. I think that's going to be the tagline for this episode: bet on yourself.
It's a
But
good
you
one.
guys had to bet on, yeah, right. You
Yeah.
really did though. You guys, as in your family, had to kind of look over obviously finances and everything like that, because the three of you coming from different backgrounds, obviously you have somebody in the movie industry and you have you and your family, but just the risk that you guys took is one of the riskiest decisions that you could make, and just to kind of see everything unfold, it was just so satisfying, or at least as a viewer, but also too just as your story and just learning more about you and stuff is it's so cool to hear.
You bet on yourself. I mean, who would you rather bet on than yourself? Like you can control that, like you want to bet on a sports team, you can't control that. The at least allegedly you can't control that. Anyway,
Yeah.
during the heart of it, Matt, when it first happened, it was such a shock. The abruptness of our funding getting pulled, and I can't remember if it was mentioned on the show or not, but we literally got our funding pulled the way that this is, way in the weeds, but the way that we had arranged it on our fund, and most startups are this way, is we would get funding periodically once we hit targets, and once we hit, and when we're pre-launch, we don't have financial targets we're hitting, we're just hitting the timelines of the launch. And we were so far ahead of all of those things, and on the cost side and on how we were managing our cash. And I was like, man, I'm just killing it. Like I'm doing great. Like they should have a parade for me outside that I'm doing so awesome. What could possibly go wrong? Our investor is going to be so happy of how smart and how well we are as a team of managing all this stuff, that we had we had we had actually made it easier for them, because we were like, hey, you don't, let's change the way that you're giving us our funding, and we'll just kind of go month to month because we're so far ahead. It's going to save you the money. Great. That was like, you guys going to throw a parade for us? You're not? Okay, we'll just keep going. We were a week away from payroll and running out of money when they pulled the funding. So we literally had 7 days of cash left.
Wow.
I don't think we talked about that on the show. And I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. It's just a fact. And I understood it. I understood exactly why they had to do it, but it didn't change the fact that we only had 7 days. So what I'll always appreciate about Mark and Lev is, you want to talk about two cats that not only thrive when they feel their back is against the wall and they're cornered, but are also so team oriented and loyal that they were like, there's no way we're letting this thing go under, and we will fund it ourselves with you. And in a weird way, if you think about it, and they were absolutely correct. I cannot say that I was thinking this. So this is certainly, I appreciate them saying this, is the risky money has already been invested. We are on the cusp of launching it, and we're going to know a whole lot more about what this is all about and what this business is after we launch it. And if you want to just think more tangibly, we're going to be a lot more valuable frankly, as a business, as an investment the day after we launch it than we are the day before we launch it. Makes sense, right?
Hmm.
I was like, well, that's true. No denying that. So we had to change our plan. We went from thinking about it a certain way to thinking about it in a much different way. We scaled back a lot of our planning in order to because the future was so uncertain, and and I'm glad we did it because we were right. They were right. Is literally, just in terms of tangible value of what this company is worth, is it worked out exactly the way that they said it, and that was based on their experience and also just having gone through times in their life where they've persevered through things. Which, by the way, is exactly why I wanted to do this, because I learned very quickly, do I have what it takes to not just survive but thrive when the my back's against the wall.
Dude, I'm fired up, man.
I got to learn. I got to learn it. You can't learn that shit in a book, you know. You learn it by doing it. And and I shouldn't just say me. I mean, but it's the team too, because now with the other variables and the other things that are headwinds for us, for any startup, we're like, fuck it, man. We can get through anything as long as we stick together, as long as we're honest about what we're confronting, and as long as we're creative about collaborating through and coming up with to solve the problems that exist for us. We can get through it.
Yeah, and being digitally native, and there's people like myself who know the brand either through watching the documentary, the story, seeing Steph Curry wear it, and then you're like, "Oh, hey, I want to get that."
Well, definitely the discovery part was one we were really excited about in our infancy. Is we definitely wanted people to have their own experience and how they found out about us, or at least feel that they did. And in our category, like starting from something from zero, and this is definitely new for me because I've never worked at a place like this. Is we had no brand awareness, like none, zero. Like the first day we started, no one knew about us. So we're at a place like Callaway, for example, that you mentioned, where I was within the golf category. We had almost 100% brand awareness. There's no golfer that has never heard of Callaway, but at Municipal, we're starting from nothing, and so we're trying to build a community and a grassroots groundswell of people that are supporting us. And I think, just like we were mentioning with AJ, I want the people who are with us at the beginning to feel like they were here at the beginning. Like someday, 20 years down the line, I want them to have the same feeling like those first people that had the first Nike shoes that Phil Knight was selling out of the back of his car, in a more modern way with us. And I want people to have that kind of loyalty to the things we're doing, and one, rooting for us to win.
I'm definitely one of those guys for sure, and just knowing from your guys' story, I absolutely love it. But on the CEO side of things, I know you're huge into culture. We talked a lot about it, just the work environment that you try to create with the employees at the company. But how much do you put into culture at the company?
No lie, it's probably 60% of my day is around thinking of things that are environmental, like the environment we're in. And that can go up. Sometimes it can go up, sometimes it can go down. And well, I just knew, having, just philosophically, how I'm motivated and wired, that was the most important thing we could do, was from the early stages, not just talk about it, but make people really feel and understand that it's the most important thing we do, is to create the environment where people feel like they're heard, they're respected, that they are going to collaborate and innovate as a team. And I really, I told them from day one, and I believe, I'm telling them that on day 701, that I want them, when they pull into this parking lot, to get jacked up that they're going into those doors that day. Not just because they're coming up with new things, that they're feeling like they're a part of our success, but that they're just excited as shit to work with the people that they get to work with. And that intensity stays all the time. And I just feel recommitted to that too, even now, because I think that, as we were talking about, we're just as a society, maybe you can relate to this, is we're coming out of a period where I think most of us, if not all of us, were probably relying more on like our survival skills more than anything else. And that's just not a mode that leads me to happiness, nor does it lead me to personal growth. And I kind of had realized this towards the end of last year, that I got to get back to the values and the things that are really important to me for growth versus the things that are related to my putting my head in my little turtle shell and protecting myself from all the macro crap that's going on, from real stuff like the pandemic to news of the day to the things that just kind of beat us down, to having more of the spirit of ascension and growth. And that's personal growth, that's professional growth. And for municipal is the growing of this brand and this business.
I'm so on board with that, just with culture and just having some sort of growth within the company. I think that's so important, especially for the employees too, to want to stay there. I guess the final question on the CEO side of things: what do you believe that it takes to be a great leader?
Authenticity, absolutely. Don't try to be someone else. If you want to look at it in a more positive way, is just be yourself. And that there's a lot to that. Understand who you are. Understand what's important to you. Let your team know what's important to you. Let it never waver from that. With authenticity comes things like, how important is it to have high character? How important is it for people to know that your integrity is not going to be compromised or bargained with? And then I think, just on a personal note, because you mentioned it, the higher up you go in any organization, and even one like ours, which is small, the higher up you go, the lonelier it gets. That's just a fact. That and you hear that everywhere. Like, I remember a dumb anecdote. I remember seeing the story where Randy Moss, I think, had a Halloween party when he was at the Patriots. Just as a joke, he invited, I think it was Randy Moss, he invited Bill Belichick to come to his party. Costume party. It was Halloween. And he just did it as a joke, and Bill Belichick came. And they asked Belichick later, like, I can't believe you went to, Bill Belichick, that's the most stoic guy there is. You went to Randy Moss's Halloween party at a roller rink. He was dressed as a pirate. I remember this. Bill Belichick dressed as a pirate. And he goes, because nobody invites me anywhere. And I thought, that's because leadership is lonely. And even in that, like in a team sport, you'd think, oh, they're always inviting their coaches. And especially Bill Belichick, who maybe they thought, maybe more stern guy, you don't want him to party. But so it gets lonely. And I think the advice that I would give, and this goes for anything, but especially as you start to rise, is surround yourself with people who want you to win and who unconditionally want you to win. If you're lucky, it can include the people that you actually work with. But even if you're not sure about that, you definitely have a core group around you that you can rely on to fill you up. And it's hard when you're the ultimate decision maker, because there's no one to turn to and be like, you make this decision, like you're the one that have to do it. So if you have people that around you that know their love for you is unconditional, meaning if I make a bad decision somewhere, that we did this and it cost us this, and boy, that was a failure. My wife doesn't care. She doesn't care. Great. She still loves me. And, my best friends don't care. And that'll really help you get through most of things. And just, it's an exercise that everyone should do, is like, write down on a piece of paper, who are the 5 people or 3 or 2 that when push comes to shove, come hell or high water, no matter what, these are people that want me to win. And you start from there. Start from there.
My man, CEO of Municipal, co-founder of the company, Harry Arnett, just dishing knowledge left and right, man. You're firing me up. I'm sure everybody at home listening, watching this is too. So, dude, before we hop into the bonus content, I want people to be able to follow along in your journey and maybe add to that support system that you have and give you some positive energy when it comes to filling the cup. So where can everybody follow you on social media? And also, too, shoot out any other handles or websites that you'd love people to go visit.
Oh, well, first off, check our website out, municipal.com. And then it's easy to find our company on Instagram. Mostly that's where most of our social content we do on Instagram, some Facebook. And then I'm usually on Instagram and Twitter, and I'm just Harry Arnett on both of those. You can find me. And I like to hear from people. I like to mix it up.
Let's go, baby. And you'll see some cool dog photos on the Instagram side, too. If there's any
I'm a little
dog lovers out there, get ready.